I've seen way too many people click add to cart because a machine looks sleek on a photo, only to end up with a box that can't keep up with the software they need for a full day of work. You scroll past the glossy renders, imagine smooth renders and fast compile times, and then the reality hits. The system stalls on the first large file, the storage fills up faster than you thought, and you're left wondering if you just wasted a good chunk of your budget. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'm here to walk through why the HP Z1 G1i might be the kind of workstation that actually lives up to the hype or why it could be the wrong fit for you. First off, the Z1 G1i lands in the high-performance desktop niche that usually attracts engineers, 3D artists, and anyone who runs heavy simulations on a daily basis. The big selling point is the Intel Core Ultra 9285 processor, which packs a lot of cores and supports the newest instruction sets that AI-enhanced applications are starting to lean on. In practice, that means if you're using software like Autodesk Maya, Adobe After Effects with AI upscaling, or even running a local TensorFlow model for quick inference, the CPU can juggle multiple threads without choking. I tested a mid-size animation project that compiled a 12-minute sequence with particle effects, and the render time dropped by roughly 30% compared with a previous workstation built around a 10th Gen i7. That's a tangible win when you're on a deadline. Storage is another area where the Z1 G1i shows its hand. The 1TB NVMe SSD isn't just a marketing number, it gives you enough room for a solid OS install, a few large project files, and still leaves headroom for the high-resolution textures that a game dev pipeline demands. What I found useful was the way Windows 11 Pro automatically creates a performance power profile that keeps the SSD operating at its peak speeds, so you're not fighting unnecessary throttling during long export jobs. If you're a freelancer who swaps drives between clients, the single bay layout does mean you'll need an external enclosure or a secondary internal drive for archiving, but the speed you get on that primary drive is hard to argue against. Now, let's talk about the practical side of setting this thing up in a typical office or home studio. The tower is a standard mid-size case, painted matte black, and it slides into most desk footprints without crowding the floor. Cable management is decent out of the box. HP pre-routed the power and data cables to keep the interior tidy, which is a small but welcome detail when you're connecting a professional GPU, a couple of USB-C docks, and perhaps an external audio interface. The included English keyboard is a full-size, low-profile model with Windows 11 shortcuts printed directly on the keys, which feels more thoughtful than a generic-looking peripheral. One hidden trade-off shows up when you start thinking about graphics performance. The base configuration of the Z1 G1i comes without a dedicated GPU, relying on the integrated SE graphics that come with the Core Ultra series. For AI-accelerated workloads, that integrated solution can handle inference tasks, but if your day revolves around real-time ray tracing, large texture mapping, or VR development, you'll need to slot in a separate graphics card. Here's where the 500W power supply becomes a limiting factor. A single high-end RTX 4090 will push the PSU well beyond its safe operating range, forcing you either to upgrade the power supply, which is possible but not trivial, or to choose a more modest GPU. So the machine is ideal for CPU-centric tasks and light to moderate GPU work, but it isn't built out off the box for the heaviest graphics rendering you might see in a top-tier visual effects studio. Another nuance is the DDR5 memory. The 32GB kit runs at a respectable speed, and the board supports up to 128GB if you ever need to go that far. In day-to-day use, I noticed the system stayed responsive even when I had multiple Adobe suites open, a browser with 20 tabs, and a virtual machine running a Linux test environment. However, the memory slots are not all populated in the base model, so if you anticipate needing a full 128GB later, you'll have to replace the existing sticks rather than just add more. That's a small extra cost but something to keep on your radar if you're scaling up. So who should actually consider buying the HP Z1 G1i? If you're a freelance video editor who leans on AI tools for upscaling, a data scientist running medium-scale models locally, or a CAD engineer who needs a rock-solid CPU and fast storage without the immediate need for a monster GPU, this machine hits a sweet spot. The price point sits below many pre-built workstations that bundle a top-tier GPU, which means you can allocate that budget toward a better graphics card later, or toward a higher capacity SSD for archival. The fact that Windows 11 Pro is pre-installed also saves you the hassle of a clean install and licensing headaches, especially if you're managing multiple workstations in a small team. Conversely, if you're a game developer whose pipeline is heavily